Hey everyone, if you're into Stranger Things or The Goonies or any of those movies that have kids solving mysteries or going against the supernatural, you're going to want to look at the setting from Pinnacle called Pinebox, Texas Middle School. Savage World, one of the best games today. Hey everyone, it's Carl with Tabletop Tango. Look at the bubbles, do the stuff. We'd love your support. Don't normally hawk for it. Have recently because there's a lot of great Kickstarters going on and we're missing them because we just don't have the funds to go after them and provide them interesting things like this particular one, Pinebox Middle School. So that's what we want to talk about today. So we want to do an overview of the Pinebox Middle School setting from Pinnacle Entertainment. It's a great setting. It's got a lot of information, and it's really geared towards youth, middle school students solving mysteries or going against the supernatural and solving those sorts of things. So right from the concept backgrounds part of the setting, it says, in this setting, the player characters are enlightened adolescents between the ages of 11 and 14 who are enrolled in Pinebox Middle School. For most kids in Pinebox, the greatest threats they face are pop quizzes, overly enthusiastic dodgeball games, and troublesome school bullies. For your characters, these are minuscule challenges compared to the horrors that occasionally rear their disfigured heads on the abandoned farmsteads or in the dusty alleys and dense forests beyond the city. So there you go. That's kind of the whole baseline of it, and so it's pretty cool. If this one of the things about this setting is it focuses more on modern times. It has kind of a modern feel. Now, if you want that feel of the 80s, sort of that Stranger Things feel from the 80s, there's another setting out there that's a licensed setting called Monster Hunters Club, which does a great job of giving that feel. So you might want to check that one out too, as well as Pinebox Middle School. So this obviously takes place in Pinebox, just like the venerable ETU does, and East Texas University, one of the classic settings from Pinnacle. However, unlike the students coming from all over the place to the college, these are folks who live in this area all year round, going to school, having summers, and so it kind of focuses on adventures can take place anytime, any place within the setting. So let's talk about character creation first. The section on character creation starts with a list of tropes that are classic for kind of middle school. They have things like the athlete, the budding scientist, gamer geek, or I should say gamer or geek, and so a bunch of other ones. And the students range from the ages of 11 to 14. There are several limitations during character creation that are right out of the box as you're creating your character. First is each character starts with young, major, hindrance, as well as small. Attributes are capped at D6 at creation and subtract 1 from strength rolls. Only have 10 points for skills, and they start at a maximum is capped at D6 for skills. This represents the fact that they're young and they don't have life experience and that sort of thing. There are a number of edges that are not allowed. For example, arcane backgrounds, brave, connections, beastmaster, for example, are not allowed. So after you start with the basics, then you generate a family. This is done by leveraging a random table. Characters also get what they call an extracurricular activity, which is also from a random table. And that would have things like athletics or student organization. And these give certain benefits to the character based on these organizations or pastimes they have. So let's talk about hindrances. So there are numerous new hindrances, but the majority of them are aligned with being the flavor of being a kid, obviously. For example, there's latchkey kid, there's helicopter parent, and these are also some related to the fact that this is kind of got that weird world kind of flair to it. So for example, there's one called haunted, which means you're personally haunted by a ghost. So for example, haunted. You are personally haunted by a ghost, a poltergeist, or some other supernatural spirit. Work with the principal, which is what they call the game master principal, to determine the personality and motivations of the spirit hounding you, maybe even a name. It may be mischievous, outright malevolent, playing tricks, taking items, and causing mayhem for the kid. This should not happen more than once or twice per session as the principal sees fit. So not completely a mechanical one, but it's interesting. It adds a lot of flavor. Helicopter parents, another one. This is where kids' parents and guardians are irrationally overprotective. They keep in contact with their precious little troublemaker throughout the day, often calling at the most inopportune moments. They also have a habit of showing up when least expected and making demands of their kid. So what a great opportunity for that cell phone call to come right when they're about to get into trouble, go into the abandoned house that they think the evil person's in or whatever. That's pretty cool. There's also 12 new edges, if we want to talk about edges. And those are also geared around the flavor of being a kid and being related to the supernatural that they deal with. So for example, they have one called Touched by Magic, which is a natural knack for using talismans, which is one of the part of the magic system is talismans. Another one is Imaginary Friend. So that's kind of cool, right? You have imaginary friend. There's only one combat edge, and that's because combat isn't the most important thing because, kids attacking each other or going against the big evil, it's not really kind of the main thrust of this setting. There's obviously weapons and gear along those lines. They have a thing called soft weapons, which don't do damage, but can be used for tests. And those are things like airsoft guns. So they don't really cause damage, but they help sort of give the player character an advantage. So let's talk about, like, for example, Touched by Magic. I brought that up. So this is a novice one, Spirit D6, Occult D4. Your character has a natural knack for using talismans and ignores 2 points of activation penalties when triggering them. The youngster also has been bequeathed one mysterious heirloom or item purported to grant power, though it may not be clear yet how. The principal may choose one of the talismans of note or grant to your character. So that's page 83 in the book. So they have talismans of note. So they have a list of them. The combat edge, soft weapon expert. Your character has mastered the use of soft weapons. When a clever kid is successful on a test with a soft weapon, the target becomes stunned when rolling less than a 4 to defend, rather than just a critical failure. So cool. So it's cool. They add a bunch of 12 new edges. So let's talk about gear. I mentioned it a little bit. So soft weapons is one of the key things that they add in because these are kids. It's not meant to be deadly. So soft weapons don't do traditional damage. Instead, when using these weapons to test the target with fighting, shooting, or athletics, the instigator ignores the repetition rule for test, allowing the wielder to perform the same action in subsequent tests without penalty. So that's what those bring. Another one of the things that's in the system or in the book is clubhouses, which is cool because clubhouses and bases you've seen in some of the other settings, like the Superpower Companion has headquarters that it define. Here they define clubhouses, and this is defined in 4 steps. First, you roll an advantage, then you roll a complication, then you determine the clubhouse's form, what's it look like, and then finally you get upgrades. So it's all about random tables defining what the structure is. And I won't go through all of these ones in the table, but you randomize it, you look at what you get, and it's kind of cool. Now you have a base of operation for your kid, and it's very similar to the other bases of operation that are in other companions or settings. Speaking of settings, so let's talk a little bit about the setting rules. They talk about including tropes of the genre, and then they include information on advancement by grade. So advancement's not the same. So advances are given based on the grade and the milestone that they reach. So for example, end of first semester, they get a skill point. End of 6th grade, they take an advance. That's a normal advance that they can, use, and then they can upgrade their clubhouse. And then end of summer, they get a skill point that they can raise an existing skill die. Then in the 7th grade, they get an advance for their first semester, which is a normal advance. End of 7th grade, they get a growth spurt. Your young hindrance is now minor rather than major, and you're no longer small. Then end of summer, they take advantage of advance and upgrade of their subhouse again. So, and then 8th grade has a similar thing that goes in advance, And then at the end, you're a middle school survivor, and that's kind of the end of the campaign. It says, congratulations, you managed to survive middle school and immediately gain a point of conviction. Woohoo! That's no small feat in a town like Pinebox. You no longer have the young hindrance, and you may now ignore the maximums, the skills, and attributes. But, that's kind of the end of probably should be the end of the campaign anyway, considering that it's all about youths. One of the cool things they describe is what they call the McAllister maxim, which is named after the character in the Home Alone movies, which baseline says all attacks cause non-lethal damage by default. So again, it's meant to be a non-lethal kind of thing. Then it also provides a bunch of information on Pinebox. It gives the history, the climate, people of interest, places of interest. It provides a map of the school as well. So you know what your middle school, what the location looks like. Then there's a section called the principal office, which is a GM section only. And that gives you more information about the county Pinebox is in. It gives you a random set of tables for some new supernatural events, the defining adventures and stuff like that. Then the section is on arcane. Arcane stuff is all based on rituals, which is very similar, and it's identical to what you have, at least it looked like it in the Horror Companion. So, and there's probably in other companions or other setting books. So it's all about rituals. And to do a ritual, it requires 3 steps. You select the power, you prepare for it, and then you do the casting. The power points needed for a power don't actually get taken from anyone because, again, there's no arcane backgrounds. But it is used to define the cost of components and the penalties. So preparation takes 10 minutes per rank of the spell or the power. Cast uses the occult roll in a difficult dramatic task. And then there's tables that talk about the items needed based on how common they are, if they're exotic, that sort of thing. There's a couple of new powers, won't talk too much about them. Then there's a section that describes talismans, gives a list of talismans of note. And these are items that are that you can use within your campaign as items of power that they might gather or find or be able to use. Now, when we start talking about the adventure section, very rich and robust. That's part of the whole point of this particular setting book is it's got a big plot point campaign. From the book, it describes the plot point campaign as the descent into the infernal plot point campaign introduces the heroes to Pinebox Middle School and then, over the course of 3 years, 6th through 8th grade, reveals the dark secrets at its core, a cancerous evil that's been growing beneath the surface for decades. So that's the basic premise of the plot point campaign. I read it. It's pretty cool. I am not going to say anything about it because, obviously, if you're a game master, you don't want your players to know anything about it. There's also an adventure generator based on cards, very common, right, for settings. And then there's 13 Savage Tales, which is great. I mean, there's a lot of content to do your campaign, so it's pretty cool. And then finally, there's a bestiary. Includes a good list of creatures, about 23 in total. Things like demons, ghosts, cultists. I'm not going to talk too much about them. I know you probably want me to because I don't want to spoil it for game masters with their dastardly use plans for these creatures. Though I'll probably in another video pull out those creatures for a fantasy campaign. But anyway, so that's kind of the basis of Pinebox Middle School. Great book. I like what they did with the hindrances. I like what they did with the edges. I like the concept that it's more non-lethal. It's all about the mysteries and solving the supernatural. That kids aren't. That this is kids on bikes solving mysteries. So if you need your Goonies and Stranger Things fix, great setting for that. Pinnacle did another great job. So once again, I'm Carl with Tabletop Tango. Look at the bubbles, do the stuff. We'd love your support. Likes, subscribes, all that good stuff. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks. Savage World, one of the best games today. Savage World, Penny.